Good morning. I hope you all had a good weekend. A quick reminder that we will have a quiz over the Hunger Games on Wednesday, and we will be starting the Marrow Thieves on Friday. As you can see by this title slide, we're going to talk about romance, we're going to talk about identity, we're going to talk about dystopia, and because I tend to go off topic, we'll probably talk about a lot of other stuff. Quick refresher about the romantic novel. Romantic novel has a plucky heroine readers will sympathize with. Katniss certainly seems to fit that. The romantic novel has a love interest. This novel has two, Gale and Peeta. The relationship will be stymied by conflicts. I think the Hunger Games constitutes conflict until the happy ending, which affirms love conquers all and makes everybody cry during Hallmark movie season, especially the Christmas Hallmark movies. That's not going to happen here. It's a dystopian novel. We can't let that happen. Going through the romance in a little more detail. First of all, if you look in Act 1, you're going to introduce the protagonist who feels incomplete. The protagonist is going to meet the love interest, but there's a conflict. The characters are going to be forced to spend time together, and then finally, the characters' goals are going to be at cross purposes. If you look at the novel, on page 6, Katniss says she can be herself only with Gale, and she smiles only when she's in the woods. It seems to me that since she can only go in the woods under penalty of punishment, and she cannot go into the woods 24/7. She's incomplete, and she certainly is incomplete if she can only smile when she's with if she can only be herself with one person. The second love interest is drawn at the reaping, and because it's going to be the Hunger Games, we know that they're going to have to wind up killing each other, which leads us to point 4. Characters' goals are going to be across purposes. And then they are forced to spend time together, whether it's at the Justice Building or whether it's on the train and the trip to the Capitol or whether it's while they're training. All of those things are, again, times when they are forced to spend time together, times when they are forced to be together. And we already touched cross purposes. Hunger Games means that they are going to be asked to, fight to the death. If we go into Act 2, the characters are bound together in a situation. There's some tension, sometimes sexual tension. The protagonist's individual desires are at conflict with the growing relationship, and there's a crisis. The shift to prioritize the relationship ends in disaster. Peeta confesses his love in front of Panem, at the games. That certainly ties them together in the situation of the games, and they're in the cave. They're making out in order to get more sponsors, in order to get the audience to side with them. There's still the individual desire. She feels Gale's eyes watching them. And then we see this idea that the games were the thing that allowed her to, act in a romantic manner towards Peeta, but there's no games back home, and she realizes she's been lying to 2 people. We've got this idea that a prioritizing the relationship is going to end in disaster. Act 3, the protagonist is going to make the personal sacrifice to fulfill the relationship. That's not going to happen here. There's not going to be a happily ever after. The 1 through 8 steps of Act 1, 2, and 3, you can see that I stole online from the Novel Factory. The ones from the book, I think the matchup there is pretty good. So we do have a romance with a dystopian twist. And to add to the dystopian twist, once again, when we get to the end, we have this reminder there's no games to hide behind back home. She can't frame anything. She's talks again about the lying, giving that whole quotation about lying to 2 people. This novel will not allow the happily ever after ending. And I think any dystopian novel, especially a series, that initial book is not going to have a happy ending. We've talked about names, we've talked about actions, attitudes, being parts of a person's identity. And I want to talk about appearance here a little bit because I think Collins does a pretty good job of showing us how one's appearance can affect one's identity. When she's at home, at the very beginning of the novel, she has the long dark braid. She has a forage bag. She wears hunting boots. She's wearing trousers. She's wearing a shirt. She is, dressing as a person who lives in the seam, as a person who lives in District 12. Nothing fancy, functional clothing. At the Hunger Games, it is either sensational or deadly, which makes perfect sense because the Hunger Games are designed to be deadly, and the Hunger Games are designed to create a sensation for the people of the Capitol. Okay, we have the boots, but they are shiny and leather. They're not supple. They lace up to her knees. They're not good for hunting. Um, Instead of a shirt, she's got the unitard, and she's got this fluttering cape, and this fluttering cape is going to be lit on fire just before the chariot rolls into the streets. And it's this idea of going from a girl of the seam to the girl on fire. And throughout the entire novel, she, the last half of the novel, she is the girl on fire. And the girl on fire plays with both the positives and negatives. She made a big splash at the opening ceremonies. However, the girl on fire, singes off 6 inches of her braid. She burns herself rather badly. Um, she makes a mistake ripping away some of the fabric. All of those things are part of the identity as well. And the games burning away part of the identity by causing burns and singeing off part of her braid with the appearance. I think that that's an important element to look at who and what she is and how the Capitol has forced her to change who she is and made it difficult to get back to the girl from the seam. Notice that she takes the makeup off, um, but it's more than just taking the makeup off. She cannot return to who she was. She's having a tough time remembering who she is and who she is not. And just removing the makeup, just removing the clothes, just getting back into the shirts and trousers from the seam don't seem to be enough. That the Hunger Games have changed who she is as a character, who she is as a human being. Perhaps creating a sense of post-traumatic stress that was kind of mentioned or alluded to in the myth section whether Collins created a myth. And I think her appearance here, she's trying to use the appearance to create her identity or to get her to remember what her identity is, and she's unable to do it. We as readers are hoping she's going to be able to make it. Um, she's trying to remove the makeup, the signs of the Capitol. She's trying to put her hair in a braid, which was what it was back home. She's probably trying to grow those 6 inches back that she lost, but it's difficult. She can't remember who she is. She's struggling to remember who she is or who she is not. I think also I want to talk about not just appearance and reality, but I'm just going to transition into what I'm calling human and the other. The idea that the Hunger Games points to the the terror, the flaws, the destruction that can happen if we refuse to see other people, other human beings as human. Okay, on page 40, right after Gail says, how different can it be from hunting? She talks about if I can forget their people, it'll be no different at all. Haymitch hammers home this idea that the Hunger Games aren't about people. The Hunger Games are about the big show, and the Hunger Games are about how the tributes are perceived. It's not about the games, or it's not about the people. Katniss even falls into it. Foxface doesn't get a name. Thresh is named. Cato is named. Other characters there are named. But Foxface doesn't get a human name. Foxface is just a nickname, and it's an animal nickname. It's not even fully human. She understands that that's wrong, and she kind of talks about the idea that Foxface, since that's the only name we have for her, would have been one of the smartest tributes, and it's ignorance that brought her down. Okay. And talking about overestimating and underestimating, but at least here she's dealing with the character as a human being. And then obviously the mutations in chapter 25, the whole, you know, the the ones who have been killed are now somehow brought back to life as animals, and whether it's transplants or whether it's just using the character's eyes or who knows what it is, but the idea that they are still part of the entertainment. They are not human beings. They don't aren't going to be treated with dignity. I think that that's an important part of this novel, the idea of treating human beings as human. And, Katniss makes that pretty direct. Everything is about them, not the dying boys and girls in the arena. They don't even see the boys and girls in the arena as human beings, as boys and girls. They are just tributes. And I think it's one of the things that makes this novel worth reading for anybody of all ages. I think always have that constant reminder of what happens if you fail to treat others as human. And the idea of doing unto others as you would have them do unto you, the golden rule that goes across nearly every culture. I think it's important to understand that this novel shows what happens when that isn't followed. The other thing I want to go to very, very quickly, and I think it ties into some degree with the idea of appearance, what Panem appeared to be versus what it was, and it deals with this idea of treating others as human. If the officials found out, he would be publicly executed for inciting a rebellion. Just the making of a bow to hunt, to get food, would have been seen as citing a rebellion. It would have been how it was perceived, not an act of being human. And at the same time, the peacekeepers, who are supposed to represent all that is good and were supposed to represent the law, are free to engage in their humanity. They're free to eat. They're free to, purchase meat that they know has been hunted from outside the seam because they're hungry. They are free to engage in that human activity of eating. Then I think the other thing is the idea, once again, that the children exist not as children, not as human beings, but they exist as something that the capital can use to show its control. We're going to take your kids. You can't stop us. Oh, by the way, if you try, we will destroy you. So you better let us take your kids. Your kids should be seen as a tool that keeps you alive, that keeps you from being destroyed, not as human beings. The idea of seeing human beings as ends unto themselves rather than as a means to an end is a thing that the capital constantly destroys. And whether it's the peacekeepers being free to see themselves as humans, but not others, whether it's the capital sending the message loud and clear, the only humans that matter to us are the ones here in the capital, I think Panem deals with the idea of the other and, illustrates what happens if societally, on a wide level, human beings start being seen as an other rather than as a human being. Going back to the coal thing, or to Panem some more, again, students aren't seen as things to be educated. District 12 exists solely to provide coal to the school. Okay, we owe the capital. We aren't humans in ourselves. We are things that are in debt to the capital. And one of the ways to keep human beings as another, at least in Panem, is to, keep them from getting food on the table, or to keep them thinking about only food on the table. Keep them thinking about what it means to eat and, not having enough and that fear. So Panem, I think, goes back to, first of all, appearance and reality. It appears to be one thing, but in reality, it isn't. And the Peacekeepers, I think, illustrate that. Panem also, I think, illustrates in an important way the problem of treating people as an other at a societal level. And so I think if we're going to deal with appearance and reality and identity, Panem's whole goal seems to be destroying individual identity and identity of the whole region, the whole district. One last thing, the weirdness of the rules. Okay. The people of Panem don't seem to have any problem with killing children. Nothing is about the boys and girls in the arena. However, they don't seem to like cannibalism. They therefore will try to head off cannibalism because that doesn't play well in the capital. The whole idea of people being treated as others doesn't seem to apply to them. They are fine with people being an other, people being only a source of entertainment, people being a means to an end, not an end unto themselves. But they have some weird line about cannibalism, and there's no rhyme or reason because it seems as if the only thing that matters to them is their entertainment and their sense of control. So if you look at Panem, you're looking at corruption, you're looking at a thing that's designed to dehumanize people, you're looking at a government structure that's designed to have complete and total control over its citizens. Okay. And then a couple of other just minor things here with Panem. The surveillance birds, the tracker jacker nests, the tech in the arena. Um, all of those things cost a lot of money. All of those things are great advancements used again to assert control. Meanwhile, the people in District 12 don't have hot water unless they boil it. They don't have, indoor plumbing, it seems. Those sorts of, that dichotomy between rich and poor, that split between rich and poor, and the idea to control as if one is controlling a pet or something, seems to be a central element of it. And once that happens, again, you have poverty, you're denying the kids education, you're seeing the kids only as a source of entertainment, and it doesn't matter if they kill each other as long as they don't eat each other. Okay, this will be what we'll start in class on Wednesday. Again, remember there's going to be the quiz on Wednesday, but I think the important thing here is that Panem's about crushing the identity. And I think I've said that often enough where we can just kind of close this thing out. And I hope that all of you have a good day, and we will see all of you in class on Wednesday.